Susan Sontag, the celebrated American sociologist, once said that wars exist between the worlds of the well and those who are ill. This was born from her own personal experience as a survivor of cancer. And many years later, when I was diagnosed with my cancer, I could relate to that. And this seems to be true for all those who are diagnosed with a life-limiting condition. It is as if they are now almost permanently exiled into another world, the world which I today call the world of the ill. After my own experience with cancer, I decided that it was important to get involved in work that would try and bring down this wall, would try and scale it, because I realized that my ability to get well required in many ways having to meet this challenge that now exiled me almost permanently as a survivor. There is a perception that this is a perception that is reinforced by the way the medical system works. As soon as you are diagnosed, you become an interesting case. You are no longer referred to by your name, the features that you can relate with, your personality. And it's the people around you too begin to behave in a different way. For the best of reasons, I'm sure, and not quite understanding what they're doing. But what happens is you get relegated almost physically to a certain space. You are the patient. You must now behave in a particular way. You must follow orders. And it's almost as if you no longer have the capacity to take any decisions of your own. And this is a very unfortunate thing, because at a time when you are yourself coming to grips with a difficult diagnosis and an illness that is in fact life-limiting, you carry this added burden that is imposed on you and which causes you great distress. I have heard patients say, it wasn't the disease so much, but it was the isolation I faced as a consequence of this disease that has made me feel so helpless, and that has completely destroyed my self-esteem. And as I say, it was in an effort to combat this that I started an organization in 1996 called CANSupport. The mission of CANSupport is in front of you. I think I need to explain something else here, and that is that unfortunately in India, 80% of people diagnosed with cancer come with very advanced and late-stage disease. This is due to lack of information, lack of detection facilities, the fact that we don't have a culture of regular checkups. And sooner or later, they are going to be told by their doctors, and often it's not the patient who is told, it's the family members. The patient is, as I said, there's this wall now, the patient is on the other side of it. And the decision-making is taken by the family now in our culture. And the doctor says, I've tried everything I could, I'm afraid there's nothing more I can do, please take your patient home. And my concern now was what happens to this patient and what happens to this family. So that in fact was the immediate trigger for starting CANSupport. And the idea was really to enable those people with advanced cancer, as well as their families, to make the choices they now needed to make, and for them to receive adequate physical, emotional, social, and spiritual support. So we started with a focus on the patient's needs. It was no longer the illness or the disease. This is person-centered care. We tried to understand what were the needs that were uppermost. We helped people prioritize those needs. And then each one of us worked as a team. Because as the mission statement itself explains, these needs are various, different. Each family is different. So we need a team to actually deliver this care in an effective way. So we started what we call home care teams. And each team had a doctor trained in good symptom control, because that is what is required at this stage, this advanced stage of disease. So he was good at pain control or any other distressing symptoms that the patient was displaying. We have a nurse on the team, perhaps the key worker, because these are people who are going to get progressively sick. Much of it is, in fact, explaining to the family what to expect. And we were quite sure that no matter how illiterate the family or poor, and that was our focus really, patients who are underprivileged and are not as advantaged as many of us are, that if they could follow instructions, and certainly our experience shows that if you explain things to people, they are able to understand. So here we were trying our effort, and the effort of the nurse was to empower those families too, to be more effective in their caregiving, and to do it in a way that made them feel that they were giving and doing something for their loved one. Today, CANSupport is the largest home care provider in India. At any one time, we have 850 patients under our care. We cover the geographical area of Delhi, as well as Faridabad, Gurgaon, Ghaziabad, Noida. So it's really what is known as the National Capital Region. We have 13 teams, the teams I've just described to you. We base them in different centers, so the map that you see shows you where each base exists. And the teams operate from those bases and cover a radius of about 24 kilometers from there. The idea being that, Delhi is spread out, there's so much traffic on the roads, and we don't want to have people just having to struggle to get places. This is a free service, and besides offering the medical, nursing, and emotional support, and yes, that is the key, the last word, the emotional support, the psychosocial support. And therefore, the most important member on that team, who I should have perhaps mentioned right in the front, in the beginning, is the counselor. Because these are people struggling alone, knowing, the patient knows they're getting sicker and sicker, even if they don't know the diagnosis. The family knows. There's a wall that separates them now, because each one is trying to protect the other. At a time when they should be coming closer, they are in fact being pulled apart. The first thing we are told when we enter a home is, the patient doesn't know, don't tell. And we have to slowly explain, and this becomes the task of the counselor immediately, to that family, that it's not in the best interest of the patient or for them to conceal this information anymore. So it's building that trust with the family, so they feel comfortable enough for us to tell the patient what the future holds for them, and to get the patient now to state what they would like done and to take the lead again. Because really, even if there is a limited time, there is much that can be done. And this is what we try and get both the patient and the family involved with. So just to illustrate the care now, you see a doctor at work. And then the next slide shows you our nurse, as I had mentioned, teaching the patient and the family's simple skills. They don't have to go to a hospital or pay someone to do this. They can do it themselves. And the counselor, guiding the patient and family through their emotional anguish and psychosocial trauma. And what I'd like you to remember, what you've seen, is that much of this involves just listening. Attentive, heartfelt listening. Listening that is not judgmental, but listening that allows people to express what they're going through, to clear their own thoughts, and perhaps to ask for certain things that they would now like done, so that they have a good completion to their lives. And this is in fact what we strive for. And much of this completion I'm talking about often relates to unfinished business. What do I mean by that? Often it's people who are no longer talking to each other, a brother or a sister. There was some unfortunate incident, and people would like that to be mended before they go. So this is what we facilitate. Or there often are issues which are of a socio-economic nature in our environment. Someone in distress because they feel, who's going to look after my family? I was the sole breadwinner, who's going to support my children? And this is a reason why we have a children's daycare as well, where children are invited, because we feel it's very important for them as members of the family and as patients. In many cases we have young children who are our patients, to be involved in life and what it has to offer. And we also have a rehabilitation scheme, as I mentioned to you, those very difficult questions of a family continuing to survive economically. So, and much of this involves really networking with other organizations, because we can't all do it all ourselves. We also have a telephone helpline, where it's a confidential service. People who are not comfortable with coming to the center, or who for various reasons would like to remain anonymous, are free to share their feelings, to ask for help of any kind, referrals, etc. on the telephone helpline. But what I really want to emphasize in what I'm saying is that, as someone rightly observed, to care for someone who is grievously sick is akin to receiving a gift. And I do believe that to be true. Certainly, that is how each one of us on the CANSupport team view it. And this is based on our personal experience. For 3 years I was in the field myself. We know that we have changed as people, that we no longer fear death or dying the same way we did earlier. We realize that we appreciate life so much more. Our patients teach us something. They teach us how to face life and live it, moment by moment, day by day, and how that life can be perhaps even more fulfilling and meaningful than the life that went before. So it's not a question of feeling sorry for patients. It's really, I would put it, it's like sitting at the feet of that patient who is now the guru and learning lessons for life. for you to live your own life. These are people struggling often with existential issues, and the answers they provide, the struggle itself is heroic, is inspiring. It shows you the human courage, resilience. It gives you hope that when your time comes, you too will be able to prepare yourself in a similar way. And we have had families finally saying, we may be physically separated, but we do believe that we shall continue to live on in our thoughts and in our hearts. So for me, really, it is a shame that in our country, where traditionally the dying have for generations died at home and were cared for with great dedication and feeling and respect, today there's an attitude that completely is isolating them physically and emotionally, whether it's in the ICU or wherever. And not, our idea is really to get people to understand that dying is part of living, and that the best place for anyone at the end of life, if it's possible, is really the home. And that yes, families need support, we can provide the support, and the answer is not to isolate this person, but to use this opportunity to help yourself and learn the lessons you now need to absorb for your own education and development. This year we are taking a further step. We are going to scale this wall of separation by inviting children from schools to come and meet our patients. And as I mentioned to you, these are patients who are grievously ill and are going to die. And we want these young people to ask questions, to find out what it was like for this person, and to celebrate that life through the arts, whether it's music, it's literature, it's theatre. And we do believe that this will have a very positive effect on everyone involved. Certainly we have a model in front of us. St. Christopher's Hospice in London has done something similar. And to quote the headmistress of one of the schools, we learned much more about ourselves, each other, and our community. The children's lives have been truly changed, and we are confident that when they have to face the death of someone close, this experience will have equipped them with skills and attitudes to deal with it effectively. And from the other side, to quote one of the patients, I loved interacting with the kids. It makes it all feel so normal and okay. And this is really what it's all about. To make dying normal and okay. To add life to those final days. To embrace that world rather than seek to isolate it or to control it. To sum up, I believe there are important lessons that we can learn about ourselves from those who inhabit the world of the seriously ill and who are dying. It is our fear of sickness and death, I would say our ignorance, our prejudices, our assumptions that cause us to erect walls around people with life-limiting illnesses such as cancer. We do not do ourselves a favor by doing so. On the contrary, what we fail to see is how the more we interact and spend time with such people and listen to them, the more we stand to gain, as the ultimate challenge of life is to make those choices that help us arrive at greater happiness, no matter what the circumstances. And this, I believe, is only possible if we gain greater clarity about ourselves and about the deeper purpose of our lives. So, there is a need for each one of us to connect in a meaningful way with a person who may have a life-limiting illness, who is grievously sick, and we must view them as a valuable resource to help us prepare for our own life's journey. And I will say finally that don't miss the chance, because frankly, it's the chance of a lifetime. Thank you.